Hey comic book collectors, do you find yourself not being able to afford the comics you're looking for, or do you find yourself spending too much money on comic books? Well, then this video is for you. Hey, I'm Christopher, aka the Bronze Age Nerd, and in today's video, I'm going to discuss 5 strategies to help you save money on comic books. So right now, we all know that money is tight. We all know that we're kind of in a down market, right? Prices are dropping all over the place for comic books, which means it's harder to sell comic books, but it also means that some prices out there look pretty attractive. But if you find yourself having less money to spend on comic books than you'd like, maybe some of these strategies will help you. Tip number 1 is to unsubscribe from comic book newsletters. So I thought of this the other day, and this is actually the inspiration for this video, is I was going through my email and I just noticed how every day I'm deleting emails from the same companies over and over again that are advertisements for comic books. Now I have pretty good self-control. Most of the time I see these new exclusives that are coming out from these sites or whatever, and I say, I don't really need that, and I move on. But every once in a while I click on it and I end up buying it. So the real danger here is FOMO buying, right? Like the whole idea of it, think about it, is if you're getting emails about exclusive comic books and you're going, I should probably go buy that, I don't want it to sell out, that's FOMO. That's not necessarily you buying it because you want it. Now, if you're aware of the exclusive or you're following an artist and you find out they have an exclusive coming up and you're like, I like that art, I really want that comic book, well, that's completely different. But if you're just clicking on it because you think, oh no, it's limited and it might be selling out. By the way, all these sites, they say things like almost gone or selling out fast in follow-up emails. Well, in the exclusive industry, I can tell you that means that it actually isn't selling that fast, because if it was selling fast, it would have sold out within minutes. And again, some sites actually do questionable stuff here where they actually set a limit that's lower than their print run, and then all of a sudden the book's sold out, but then some mysteriously pop up later on. That's pretty tricky. So definitely watch out for that. But my point is, these exclusives, if they don't sell out in the first couple of hours, then they're not really selling that fast. So no one's trying to tell you that you shouldn't buy exclusives or that you shouldn't support artists you want to support, or even comic book stores that you want to support. But if you're like me and you're getting maybe 10 to 12 different emails from places, what I did is I set those to unsubscribe, and now I don't get emails from those places, and I still visit those sites every once in a while if I want to check out what they have. So I'm aware of usually what they have either coming out, or I'm aware of what they have available. Plus, again, I follow artists. If I really care about something, I'm probably going to see it on the artist page, like on Instagram or whatever anyway, right? So I think that's one really good way to save money real fast. It's real easy. It's just a simple matter of making sure you're going through and unsubscribing from those lists. The next tip is thinking a little bit more outside the box. And speaking of thinking outside the box, I'd like to take a second to thank our sponsor. So I'd like to tell you about Cyberspace Comics. Cyberspace Comics is a huge eBay seller. Cyberspace Comics commissioned this fantastic Predator #1 exclusive comic book that's exclusive to Cyberspace Comics from Jing Hoon Yoon. And here's how they're thinking outside the box. Check out the links below. You go to their page, you check out their items. If you buy enough stuff, you get the exclusive for free. So the trade dress is limited to 3,000 if you buy 19 items from their site. And that could be any price item, by the way. It could be a $1 item, for example, and you could get the exclusive for free. So you guys know that I like to think outside the box. And to me, this is a really cool concept, right? It's something that isn't just going and buying an exclusive and paying the price for it. It's shopping at a store. And if you liked enough items, then guess what? You're going to get an exclusive. Of course, you can also buy it, but it's just kind of a cool alternative, right? Now, if you're asking yourself, hey, am I even going to find things I like? Most of these places I go there and I can't find comic books I like. Cyberspace Comics has over 150,000 comics to choose from. They are massive, and they're a reputable seller with tons of feedback and over 100% positive feedback. And I want to give you a chance to win this comic book. So how can you win this Predator 1 number comic book? Well, all you have to do is head over to my IG page, my Instagram page, and there will be a post up with a giveaway. We'll do a giveaway where you're basically going to follow both pages. What I'll do is I'll give away a comic book to a random person that comments on that post. So you have a chance to win this comic book completely for free. Plus you have a chance to go check out the website and learn how to get the comic book and future exclusives. And this Predator comic book does contain a new first appearance of a battle damaged or scarred Predator, so you're definitely going to want to check that out. All right, so go check out Cyberspace Comics for a chance to get some really cool comic books from their massive selection and get a chance to win a Predator comic book by heading over to my Instagram page. All right, on with the rest of the video. Okay, for the number 2 tip here, I did promise that this would be a thinking outside the box kind of a tip, and here's the way I look at it. So instead of thinking about, all the hot new comic books coming out and FOC and going and picking up a bunch of new comics on New Comic Book Day, a lot of those I think that maybe aren't really things you're reading or aren't things you were interested in, but they're kind of more impulse buys, right? So why don't you consider what you want your comic book collection to look like in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years? And that's the kind of the approach I think that this tip really kind of revolves around, is where do you want your collection to be? So kind of start with an endpoint. Like really, if you start asking yourself, boy, I want more Bronze Age keys, I want more Silver Age books from this run, I want a few Golden Age books, and you don't have much of that in your collection right now, well, things need to change between now and then. So start to envision what that could look like. How could you move towards a world where your comic book collection more represents what you want it to look like down the road? And you can also think of things like, okay, so if my collection looks like this and I don't want to have all these extra comic books that I've just been reading, how are you going to get rid of those? Are you going to sell them? Are you going to donate them? Are you going to put them into storage? Kind of come up with these solutions to what you want your collection to look like at the end. This is a really common issue with comic book collectors, is that we don't really set goals for ourselves. And if you think about it, it's really hard to end up in a place you want to be if you don't have any goals, right? Another key part of this tip is to think about, does my collection include these flavor of the month spec books that keep coming up? And these are the things I talk about in my top 5 not to buy series. Is that something you really want in your collection? And if it's not, maybe consider not putting any money towards it and instead saving that money towards a future key or grail that you're looking for. All right, tip number 3 is about all these random, whatnot auctions you might hop into, or eBay listings that you might browse at 3 a.m. or IG page, claim sales, that kind of stuff. When you're looking through those, I really want you to ask yourself, do you have a monthly budget when it comes to comic books? And if you do have a budget in mind of what you want to spend, then is that stuff part of it? Like if you're thinking to yourself, like I want to spend, $50 a month on new comic books that I read every month, right? Whatever the number is for you, it doesn't really matter. And I want to spend $100 a month on older comic books that I'm trying to build towards my runs or my collection, or that are for speculation purposes or whatever that might be. And then in reality, if you end up spending $100 a month on Whatnot, eBay, IG, all these different places, then are those really the comic books that were in your mind in the first place? Like think about the last tip. Is that part of your goal that you're moving towards, or are those more impulse purchases? And if you think those impulse purchases are really fun and you want to keep them as part of your comic collecting hobby, then what I would suggest doing is setting a monthly budget for just the purchases from those places. If you say to yourself that my budget is $30 a month for Whatnot, IG, whatever it might be, then in those cases, you'll know, hey, here's my budget. If it's going beyond that, then I shouldn't be doing it. Or if I've hit that budget, I should stop. Because what happens here is there's a lot of incremental little charges that build up for people that browse these auctions. They buy a $5 book here, they buy a $7 book here, they buy a $12 book there, and all of a sudden they keep doing that, and they've spent $100 that month on those items. And if that's not what you had in mind, or you're not comfortable with that, or you're trying to save money, that's something you need to be aware of. All right, tip number 4 comes directly from tip number 3. What is your monthly overall budget for comic books? Do you have one? I'll tell you, most people watching this video probably don't have a monthly budget. And if you're not budgeting for your comics and collectibles, then you're just going to spend whatever you want on those things. If you're feeling depressed, or you're feeling like things haven't been going very well in your life, maybe you're more likely to go out and buy these books and buy these expensive things more than are beyond your means. And if you do that several months in a row, or a year, or several years in a row, all of a sudden you're not in a very good place financially. Nobody should be going into debt because of their comic book collection. If you're interested in how to learn how to set a budget for comic books, then that's something I could definitely explore in a future video. But one tip I would have is to think about what your overall budget looks like for everything anyway, and take a portion of what's left over and make that your disposable budget for comic books and collectibles. And if you're thinking this is a silly tip, maybe go back over the last couple months and add up how much you spent on comic books each of those months. The number might surprise you. All right, tip number 5 is for all you cover lovers out there. That's right, most comic book collectors, in my experience, like comic book covers, and that's the thing that gravitates them towards comic books. So here's the real tip here. Be really cautious when you're looking at like doing your FOC order, or you're browsing your comic shop on New Comic Book Day, to be careful to gravitate towards all these new hot covers that you're noticing. Sure, some of them are great, and I personally love the idea of buying like a $4 piece of art or a $5 piece of art. That is something I really enjoy. But if you start thinking about how much you ever go back and look at all the hot covers in your collection that you picked up on New Comic Book Day that were an impulse purchase, not something you'd planned on ahead of time because you really enjoy that series or you really enjoy that artist, if you really stop and ask yourself, how often do I go back and enjoy these things? How often do I display them on my walls? How often is it something that I really take a minute to appreciate? That can be pretty revealing, because a lot of times I'll tell you that I go through my comic book collection and I'm like, yeah, I like this cover. I don't really need it anymore. And then it ends up in my queue of things that I'm going to sell on Whatnot or different places. And the reason that I do that is because I just think that most of these hot covers are really fun to look at, but I could get the same enjoyment looking at it as looking at it like a picture online or a wallpaper on my phone, by the way. That's a really cool tip. I often set comic book covers as my wallpaper on my phone that I think are cool art. But we definitely all have that thing where we go to a comic book store and covers are there to literally sell us the book. That is the whole point of the cover, is to draw us into that book. And it is often very effective. And if you think about it, some of those hot covers end up becoming worth money, but most of them tend to just kind of return to average. I mean, the vast majorities. If you see a cover and you just can't stop looking at it, it's a wow factor. It's something that really, think about that first Webhead Gleason cover. That's something that was different, especially at the time. Now, we've seen a lot of that, but at the time it was something very unique, very different. You think about all the classic covers over time. Really, if you can't stop thinking about it for a few minutes, that is probably your indicator that is really going to be some cover that you're really going to enjoy years down the road, instead of something that's just kind of more of a flash in the pan. Okay, so those were my 5 tips for this video for saving money on comics. Trust me, I have more we can talk about later on too, but these were ones that I just thought were kind of fun little thought experiments for the most part to get you thinking about how you collect comic books, which, by the way, is pretty important. There's a lot of people that kind of go on autopilot, and that's one of the chief ways that you can end up spending a lot of extra money on comics. Don't forget to head over to my IG for a chance to win this awesome Predator #1 by Jinghoon Yoon, and check out Cyberspace Comics while you're there. If you enjoyed this content, a great way to support me is by becoming a channel member. If you want to do that, there is a link below. When you become a channel member, you do get access to some pretty cool emoji and a chance to win free comic books every month. You can also join my Discord, go follow me on IG, Twitter, and whatnot. And until next time, I want to remind you, as always, hey, 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 hey. Get to the job.